Welcome to the Clearly Christian Podcast with Dr. Cy Smith. It's time to know more so you can say no more. It's time for the Clearly Christian Podcast. Here's your host, Dr. Cy Smith.
I'm Dr. Cy Smith, and this is Clearly Christian, a podcast about what it means to see the world from God's perspective and the impact this has on training the next generation to live a life consistent with the biblical worldview. If you've been listening and you like what you hear, I hope you'll hit the subscribe button or leave a review. That'll let others know the show's worth checking out and help spread the word to serve our mission to make a difference. So again, thank you for being here, and thank you for helping us spread the word. Today's extra credit version of the Clearly Christian Podcast is a deeper dive into the chalkboard points from our recent conversation with Zach Roberts. He's a leadership coach and executive assistant at Crossroads Church. We talked about the importance of an identity rooted in Christ and how knowing that identity drives our daily decisions and habits, often leading to big outcomes. So now for some further thoughts and questions, let's bring in our show's producer, Brian Lefelock. So Brian, thanks for joining us today. What did you think about the show? What questions do you have?
I loved the show, and I loved how he was able to bring his coaching experience dealing with people that are struggling with identity and having that biblical idea of, hey, you're more than who you think you are. I mean, that's what the whole show was all about. And so I'm interested in, as we get through this, you talk about confused kids becoming confused adults. Tell me more about that. What does that mean? I mean, we think we got it all together. We think it's the kids' problem. That's not the case, is it?
No, not at all. And that's kind of what we're finding is that those foundations are so important, and it's so important that they are laid well. And we're seeing this right now in our society, right, is that these kids are not getting any answers, in schools that aren't necessarily preaching those answers. And, hey, anything goes. And so if I just grow up believing that, hey, I'll just try this and I'll try that and I'll try this and I'll try that, it never stops. They just keep doing the same thing as adults. They never settle on one thing that gives them what they need. So they just continue to try and to try. And so, like I said, looking back, they say, man, I'm no more clear than I am now at 35 than I was at 6, 7, 8. You know, nobody was telling me anything that's true then, or at least speaking truth and following it up and saying this is absolute truth you can count on. And now as an adult, I'm just, I've got the Disney worldview. I mean, it's just, hey, find whatever truth speaks to you and follow your heart. And they go, wow, well, that didn't lead me where I wanted to go because it was unfulfilling. These personal desires didn't result in great happiness or satisfaction or something like that. I checked all these boxes and I'm no better off until they find something that's obviously true because it's bigger than you. It rests on truth that's outside of you. Truth that you create. It sounds so good, but we all know because we've lived long enough to know, it just doesn't work out. My truth, your truth, it can't all be true. There eventually has to be some objective things where we say, listen, this is right, this is wrong, this is true, this is not. And nobody's brave enough to say that to kids.
And Zach talked about how we put our identity into what we do. Who we think we are is how we revolve around the world and how we work in society. If someone says, so tell me about yourself, we start talking about our job, or we start talking about our, what we do in sports or our hobbies. And so I'm interested in how you see that. You mentioned that that's a real problem with guys. I know it's for women too, but we know full well we judge ourselves based on our accomplishments. From a superintendent role, can you tell me a little bit about how that kind of portrays itself in kids? Because ever since I can remember, we put kids in boxes. You're the smart one, you're the nerdy one, you're the athlete. We do that to them, don't we? What do you see at school?
Yeah, we have to be very careful. You're exactly right, because they latch on to an identity really quick. And I think the studies are clear that even by, upper elementary, junior high, these kids, I'm no good at math. And they put themselves, I'll never be an engineer. I'll never be because I'm no good at math. Where did you hear that? You're only 10. How in the world have you come to that conclusion already? You have a whole, big world of math ahead of you that you might be really good at. Just because you weren't good at basic arithmetic, you've already pigeonholed yourself there, or somebody has given you that identity or something like that. So we're quick to say and to identify things they're good at and things they're not good at, and then immediately attach an identity to those things. And boy, in education, we have to be so careful not to go that way, because it's, like I said, it's so devastating and detrimental to the child. Because as we said on the show, we don't want you to find your identity in what you're good and what you're not good at. Those are just how you've been uniquely designed. And God has made you really great at some things, and maybe you're not so good at others. We're all not going to be perfect at everything. That's what being born into this sinful world is all about. There was only one perfect human ever. That was Christ. And we're not going to be there. We should aspire to be there. So we work on our weaknesses, but we capitalize on our strengths. And so we've got to make sure the kids really understand that you being not so good at something has nothing to do with your identity. But you're right, especially, and I jokingly said it on the podcast, especially guys, because we are wired to want to be good at things. And it's in our nature to want to be, hey, even if I don't care what it is, from the surgeon to the carpenter, we want to be really good at that. Right? If you want to be a carpenter and that's what you love, we want to be a good carpenter. And so it's natural to find some pride in those accomplishments and to have some identity there. I mean, we don't want to say, yes, I want to be a mediocre carpenter, and I hope nobody really wants my stuff. Nobody ever says that. No 8-year-old says that. I mean, we've got kids already in school now that say, hey, I really want to be an electrician and an HVAC person and things like that, and well, that, like I said, he doesn't want to be a neurosurgeon, but he wants to work on HVACs and he wants to be an electrician and this thing. Okay, well, that guy wants to be good at that. I mean, he wants to be great at that. And he might be seeing his identity as, hey, I'm going to be the best at this particular role I possibly can. And so we've got to get him to, chase after that. That's natural, but don't let it become who you are. Because, man, when that falls apart, and it may even be a circumstance that's not you, but when that falls apart, your world crashes down in a hard, hard way. And you start becoming irrational. Like Zach said, you make bad decisions because your identity is wrapped up in something the world told you instead of what God told you. And he said, your value to me is not as an electrician. I want you to do that so well, but boy, I'm not going to be spending glory as the superintendent of anything in heaven, right? That is a role that is not needed. I just need to be a child of God and concentrate on being that to the best of my abilities. And then, of course, here on earth, be a great superintendent for the good of my fellow man, not so I can gain favor with God.
So that's the healthy perspective. But this has been going on forever, this issue. And now there's social media. Social media is just nothing but one big parade of look at me, look how great I am. This is all perfect. And we know it's not. And yet there's that pressure for kids and even adults to make up stories and make up identities for themselves. You have to see that. That's got to be just a huge pressure today.
It is, yeah. And I tell families this all the time because even with, today's parents, most of them are millennials. And I tell, even for them, they don't understand the incredible identity pressure that has come from social media. And you're exactly right. So don't assume you know anything about the pressure, the identity pressures of Gen Z. If you're a millennial or an X or a boomer, you don't. We cannot relate. I remember reading one time, and I think it was U.S. News or World Report, they sent young-looking adults in their 20s back to a modern-day high school undercover and said, hey, what's it like being a student in today's culture? They were blown away that even in 5 to 6, 7 years that they had graduated from school, because these kids were all like, 24 to 27, how different it was in high school than then when they graduated only maybe 5 years ago. And the enormous, exactly what you said, identity pressure that these kids face as a result of social media, because it's just constantly saying, who are you? What can you do? Why do you do it? Oh, and then I'm going to evaluate it right away. And that's the key. Because if I am brave and I say, yeah, okay, I'll bite. I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to post a picture. I'm going to post some opinion or something like that. And it gets a lot of thumbs down or it gets some critical comments, which is always, right? It's an immediate blow to my identity. Oh, well, maybe that's not who I am then because look, nobody liked it. And I'm immediately hurt. I'm suffering. I'm going to chew on that, right? We hold on to criticism like it's nobody's business. That's our human nature. We hold on to both things. We hold on to encouragement and we hold on to criticism. Mark Twain said, I can live 3 weeks on one good compliment. Because, it's so needed, right? But yet it's also true as well. One or two negative comments just destroys identity. And that's every day in the social media world.
And the last thing I want to bring up before we wrap up, I know that kids, elementary school kids, first graders, second graders, man, when they're on the ball field, let's use this analogy, and they strike out, they don't care. But boy, dad gets mad. Like, dad can't handle it. Or if the child doesn't bring home the right grades, I did my best. Boy, mom doesn't want to tell their friends that, Johnny got a C, right? Tell me about confused parents raising kids and the pressures. You must see a lot of that behind the scenes of parents coming in with just putting pressure on their kids.
Yeah. And I don't know if we've ever, it's probably been that way for decades. And I don't know if we're getting better at it. I don't think we're getting any worse at it. I think it's just been that way for decades. I will say it's interesting that, when I talk to my parents' generation, the boomer generation, what's interesting with that group is I know, for my father-in-law, he played college basketball. And I think he's told me a couple times his parents saw him play like once or twice over high school and college at best. For those boomers, and especially the greatest generation before them, as it was called, the generation of World Wars I and II, parents were not involved in some of those things at all. They were busy eking out a living on the farm, and there was things to do. And all of those, even your grades, were, we want you to do your best, but there was no follow-up at home, they've told me. And I've talked to a lot of people in those generations that said, the extracurriculars were seen as fun, and that's nice for you, but, this is not what life's all about. You need to, find a job, of course. You need to be skilled at something. You need, it was a whole different set of priorities. So I think it really started with Gen X and then millennials, and now it's just, maybe it is getting worse and worse. I don't know how it possibly can be, but we as adults have to be so careful. You're exactly right, because we've got to stop that flywheel from really rolling like that and saying, hey, your identity, parents, even though you didn't get it straight when you were a kid, is not wrapped up in your children. And, you're going to have to stop that bad cycle there. And maybe that was you and maybe that was your parents. But, boy, be careful in how you direct your children in that way. Well, great questions, Brian. Appreciate that. And thank you again for joining me today on the Clearly Christian podcast. And I trust that now you know more about the importance of an identity rooted in Christ and how our daily decisions are driven by that identity and can work to build a life of great purpose. Again, if you like the show, let us know by following or subscribing. Maybe hit that like button for me and let others know the show's worth checking out, too. It certainly makes a difference. I'd really appreciate that. Remember, the only way we're going to turn things around in our country is to increase the number of people who hold a biblical worldview and can live that out every day. The greatest hope we have to get there is Christian education. I'm Dr. Cy Smith, and this has been Clearly Christian.
Thank you for listening to the Clearly Christian podcast with Dr. Cy Smith. Hear more episodes at clearlychristianeducation.com. If you'd like more information about Christian education in your neighborhood, or if you're interested in education opportunities at Mansfield Christian School, or if you agree with Dr. Smith and want to help him in his mission to influence and awaken Christian America, you can send Dr. Smith an email through the clearlychristianeducation.com website. Message him on the Clearly Christian LinkedIn or Facebook page, or call the Clearly Christian Connection line at 419-756-5651. This has been the Clearly Christian Podcast with Dr. Cy Smith on clearlychristianeducation.com, brought to you in conjunction with Mansfield Christian School, a Bryan Media production.